Hi, it's Joe Lindsley talking to you from Kyiv, Ukraine, on today, the 1030th day of Russia's full-scale invasion.
Before we continue, we invite you to follow our channel, the only American show reporting live from Ukraine every day.
Usually at this time, I'd be talking live on Chicago's WGN radio. As we've discussed, that time is over. And normally in this new format, we will have co-hosts here. It is a bit strange speaking without a host after talking with Bob Surratt every single weekday for almost 3 years. And at first, I need to offer some apologies for the broadcast yesterday for our report. Some of you might have seen it when it premiered. We had a great co-host, a very dynamic person, and I think we had a fantastic conversation. But for reasons that I will make clear later, if I can, she requested that we take it down due to some situations. I know that sounds terrible, and so yesterday's interview was a bit mangled, but I still posted it because we're going to keep going every single day. It's very key to have momentum. Today, we're going to end with a video for Christmas that was produced by our team, which I'll describe at the end. And tomorrow, I'm going to be joined by my friend Brett Hill, a musician from Ohio, who will join as a guest host to hopefully give this a good dynamic in the broadcast. And before discussing a couple news items today, I have to talk about some of the situation with WGN. Bob Surratt did very graciously, the host of the morning show in Chicago's WGN radio. He very graciously invited me to come back for the remaining days this week after that broadcast on Monday, when we informed the audience of the decision of the executive management of WGN. My refusal to go on air today, for example, or tomorrow, is not anger with I want to show all respect to Bob and to the producers. It's not about that. It's about the situation that the management has put me in as well. And I realized that, for example, if I did sort of a soft, long goodbye, it would be ambiguous to the listeners what really happened. And I know that it's in the interest of the management to cover up their decision, to smooth it over. But that actually hurts me a lot. I mean, I volunteered every single day for almost 3 years, and I got to pick up the pieces and keep going, and now build up an audience here on YouTube. And I think one reason why I have a small audience on online here is because I was devoted to the radio. And even though we made video broadcasts of it, when I was speaking, I was only thinking of people driving to work in Chicago, people making breakfast, listening to the radio on the treadmill, listening in. And I always, I had to realize that they can't see what I see, and that pushed me to describe what not only what I saw, but even what I smelled and what I felt. What were the emotions of this country in war? And because I was talking to a radio audience, and I couldn't rely on images, and so everything was devoted to that audience. And now I have to shift a bit, and I need to get as much of that audience as possible to continue this. And so a soft departure would benefit the WGN executives who made the decision to cancel this very abruptly, but with no kind word for me. And so I had to make it a sharp cutoff. So it's absolutely abundantly clear that I was willing to keep going. Bob was willing to keep going, but that the management was not. And so that's why. And I know I hope Bob and team are not offended, but I have some experience with media executives, and I have to be smart here and not get played. And so that's what's happening. So thanks to Bob, and I do feel bad that I'm not speaking with you live at this very moment. But it would be it'd not be a smart move. First, we had the news the other day that Ukrainians had assassinated a Russian general in Moscow. Was extraordinary, and Ukrainians call him the chemical general. He oversaw the programs that launched chemical weapons, or they developed and used chemical weapons against Ukrainian soldiers in the front lines. And these weapons violate Geneva Convention. There's been hardly any press coverage of it, but Ukrainians are well aware of it. And I first became aware of the use of chemical weapons probably about a year ago, when friends of mine who were fighting in Donbass, people who previously had been civilians, would text me and say, "Hey, Joe, I think that they're using some stuff against us." And several of them who I knew began to get sick, problems with the lungs, and more this evidence built up, and then it became quite clear and apparent that the Russians were using chemical weapons, which as they helped Assad use in Syria. It's not a surprise, but they were using chemical weapons at the front line, and this general who was assassinated oversaw this program. But here, the Russians are very good at changing and controlling the narrative with their victim stories. And so all of a sudden, about maybe about 20 hours after the news of the assassination, we all of a sudden we see this narrative online and in the media that the Russian general who was killed, that he knew the secrets of the NATO bio laboratories in Ukraine. And so that's the whole story now, ignoring the fact that he oversaw the chemical weapons programs used against Ukrainians. And then on the biolabs, I mean, the U.S. does, has deals with, countries all over the world, and that's a different story, which we'll go into. And I've seen many ways how the United States government has used Ukrainians and tried to, and that's a separate topic. That's not why Ukrainians are fighting whatsoever. Ukrainian people, as I think we can see by now, after 3 years, they really don't want to be controlled by anyone, but especially by Moscow. And that's why, for example, in Kharkiv City, which was a Russian-speaking city with many people sympathetic to Russia before 2022, that city is one of the fiercest, strongest pro-Ukraine cities now because they've been through such hell from Russia. In fact, people are even changing their language to speak Ukrainian uh, because they're so disgusted by everything to do with Russia after 3 years of almost daily bombardments. And so this is the story of the Ukrainian people, firstly. And it's Ukrainian people that need to get rid of people like that chemical general. So that can't be missed. And then another concerning thing for the Ukrainian standpoint, Keith Kellogg, who President Trump has named as a special envoy to solve Russia's war on Ukraine. In many ways, there's some good indications. He's been strong at times in saying Ukraine can win and must win, and so Ukraine should not get the blame when Washington is refusing to give the congressionally approved support to Ukraine. But General Kellogg said yesterday on Fox News that it was wrong of Ukrainians to assassinate this general. And this is the sort of same behavior we've seen from the Biden administration. Whenever Ukrainians do something extraordinary, that opens a window of opportunity, they get slapped on the wrist at best by Washington and not supported and encouraged. And it really hurts Ukrainians' cause, in the popular sense. It was the same way when Ukrainians made the incursion into Kursk region of Russia. The Biden administration almost said made it clear that it was not something that they were enthusiastic about, and then they did not help Ukraine sort of seize that opportunity. And it's the same with General Kellogg saying this about the assassination of the general, that it's not okay because the general is not in the field of battle. But if their hands are tied in so many ways by Washington, they have to be creative. This was a precise and targeted attack that only took out the military figure who's the source of a lot of the evil inflicted here. And for General Kellogg, who I think in the sense of many people in Washington, a nice guy, well intentioned, but not super well informed. That's a fact, and we're going to talk more about this in the coming weeks, and pay attention to how how people in power actually get information to make their decisions. But General Kellogg, for him to dismiss this, and maybe part of that is out of a fear that Russia would then start attacking, making similar attacks upon officials in the West. By the way, Russia has already been doing that. Anyway, so that's a little bit of the overview of what's happening with the chemical general situation, and it's a difficult thing to get around with this biolab narrative. Next, on narratives, I would just want to mention briefly that On X at JP Lindsley, I made a post maybe 2 weeks ago about the difference between Ukrainian languages and the Russian languages, and they're very different languages. Ukraine is more similar to Polish, but it's very interesting if you look at the vocabulary, which I'll go into in later episodes, or you can look at this post. But the vocabulary is very different, and the film director Federico Fellini said a different language is a different vision of life. And so I made this post comparing three different words, very crucial words like the word for victory in both languages. And the Russians are going nuts over this. In fact, there's now more than 260 or so thousand views because the Russians are sharing this post, with great venom and great anger. And so this does show me that these are the areas that we do have to touch. That the Russians think that they have painted a picture of themselves as highly cultured, and anything that threatens that, that's a threat to the foundation of their propaganda. And just one of the essences of this is that the word for victory in Russian is pobeda, which means after the misery, and then the word for victory in Ukrainian is peremoha, which means beyond ability. And this is it's not voodoo stuff. It's two like very different worldviews that have developed over centuries. People that refuse to be slaves and people that sort of accept being slaves. And one of the pro-Russian people I was exchanging with on X said, "Well, no wonder some of our language might be sad because we've been serfs for so long, and then was saying, and now we got to protect ourselves against these color revolutions." And I said, "You're missing precisely the point. You're mired in your victim mentality. You don't realize that you could have a revolution. You could get rid of the regime, but you choose not to. You choose to accept it, and that's reflected in the language, a language of sort of misery, just refusing to believe that you can change things for the better. And Ukrainians are totally the opposite. They had that revolution in 2014 when they said we will not accept this type of tyranny." Anyway, I don't want to go on too long on this, and I am trying to keep these brief. And it is a weird, for me, it's a weird thing not having an interlocutor, which we will have again tomorrow. And the last thing I want to share with you a video that we produced with a group of musicians in Kyiv called Kings and Beggars, great medieval style musicians. Lviv is a very much a medieval city, even in its spirit, and the people have sort of that a medieval mentality, as you can see in the video. And then my friend and team member Nevan Made, Ukrainian artist, together with Kings and Beggars, we made a new version of that famous Ukrainian song "Carol of the Bells," which, by the way, was written in a city named Pokrovsk, the very city that the Russians have been trying to take since September. Pokrovsk means the protection of the Virgin Mary. That city is devastated, but it still holds in Ukrainian hands. And it was there that the Carol of the Bells was written. We prepared a new version of this, reflecting the current moods and feelings here in Ukraine, and both sadness and gloom, but also hope, and so this steadfast desire to keep going. So we'll share that with you, and I want to, in these coming days, I hope we can talk also about Ukrainian Christmas, because I really, I think that is such a great window into the Ukrainian soul and just how different Ukraine is from Russia. And provocatively, I will say Russia's war on Ukraine is really a Russian war on Christmas. And I want Americans to hear that and understand it. Russians, to this day, and this is a vestige of the evil of the Soviet time, Russians they don't really celebrate or talk about Christmas. They celebrate New Year's. And out of all my travels in the world, I've never seen a place that keeps Christmas better than Ukraine. So here we'll close with the Kyiv Carol, performed by Kings and Beggars of Lviv. And the lyrics I wrote quite quickly amid all the chaos this week, and with cover art and sort of editorial imagination from Lviv artist Nevan Made. Here is the Kyiv Carol. Thank you for listening today. Please join us tomorrow. We will try to get more reliable on releasing this at 7:20 a.m. Chicago time. Please excuse a few hiccups Anyway, for now, here's the music. Thank you.
Winter bleak, rockets ignite, burn in the sky. Yes, we do cry, lantern and bear. War fills the air, still we believe, never despair. Boom, 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 boom. My killer can get through the fight. Shade just a tear, big war is here. Victory will be for all the free. Merry Christmas, Merry, 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 Merry Christmas. Midwinter bright shadows take flight, we guard the line of western sky. Midwinter bright shadows take flight, we guard the line of western sky.